Hello, everybody. I'm Michaela Myrtle, and here's my discussion lead presentation on the annual review of race, place, and effective policing. The core issue at hand for this review article is the variance in effective policing. I have two key issues I want to describe, which are the effects of meta-discrimination, racial inequality, and how they influence a negative spiral of injustice within the policing system. First, for meta-discrimination, this is a systematic array of oppressive biases accumulated over time, influencing practices and perceptions of people, and in this case, the police. Next, racial inequality within the law enforcement. This is an issue that persists both historically and today, and it affects both the community's trust and the officers who do their job, their efficiency. How these two relate is that they combine to create the policing paradox, basically a negative spiral of injustice. When communities feel targeted or unfairly treated, it can lead to distrust and tension that undermine effective policing. This next slide is about the creation of racial biases in law enforcement, which help with the understanding of how racial inequality forms. To start, America's history of racial inequality has been deeply influenced in our institutions. This history is critical in shaping our current practices and policies. Alongside that, institutionalized racism within the law enforcement describes a systematic structures that perpetuate racial bias. Because these structures are within the system, they are foundational and can be difficult to dismantle. Lastly, the predispositions associated with ethnic facial features often occur subconsciously and can influence perceptions and decisions without people really knowing. This is very problematic when it comes to equality in policing because it can create violent environments when it is not necessary. A major theme of such effects in everyday policing is presented in the review article, with the consensus being that the more ethnically black a person's facial features are, the higher the chances a person has of being racially profiled and threatened as if they were criminals. Alrighty then, the next slides give a little bit of information about some of the main words that are important for this review article. The first one being police legitimacy. As for the definition, police legitimacy is defined as an assessment of the police's validity and trustworthiness by the public. This concept is crucial because it influences how society sees the police's character and credibility. Moreover, when people believe in the legitimacy of the police, they are more likely to cooperate and follow the laws that are being administered. In contrast, when the opposite is happening in police legitimacy and it's distrusted and questioned instead, there is conflict associated with that society and there is more negativity instead of compliance. And here I just have a photo showing all of the things that can be associated with police legitimacy. The second definition is the concept of racial disparity. Racial disparity refers to how people of varying racial groups are treated based on the society's perception of that group. Racial disparities outline the perceptions and biases that can influence interactions and possible outcomes. Concerning the law enforcement, These disparities can significantly affect the welfare of communities and society in general. Police officers' predispositions of race can also create a great impact as well. These predispositions can affect decision making processes, leading to unequal treatment of people. This topic of racial disparity and policing can be shown more in more context in the next slide, which will be showing a video.
New laws effectively re-enslaved those who had just gained their freedom and required new police to take over the former duties of the slave patrol.
Heard.
When you have black people serving in political offices for the first time, when you have black landowners in abundance, when you have black professionals, there are Reconstruction era judges, the stakes are even higher for this everyday performance of black subservience to white domination. It is the police who will ultimately serve that function of reminding black people, in many cases, their lower status in society.
What we see is that that general way of thinking about race and thinking about disorderly people never really changes. It's kind of woven into the DNA. But it's not just because individual police officers are racist, it's because the institution was literally created to make sure that wealthy and powerful people could extract labor.
Early police departments in the North had a similar goal to control labor and were notoriously corrupt.
The police functioned as an expression of political elites and powerful, affluent people who essentially wanted poor people to stay in their segregated slum communities. Police often functioned as enforcers of political machines, functioned one step removed from gangs.
Police often worked in the service of business owners who were faced with growing unrest among their labor forces in the wake of mass European immigration and rapid industrialization.
One of the best examples of this is the Pennsylvania State Police. The institutions that precede the Pennsylvania State Police are actually private police forces which are owned by people who are running coal mines. And their job is explicitly to control the workers who are trying to unionize for rights.
New laws effectively re-enslaved those who had just gained their freedom and required new police
On to
to
the
take
next
over.
slide. Here are the effects of poor police management. Firstly, poor police management weakens relations between communities and police forces. These strained relationships can often come from a lack of trust and understanding, which then turns into tension and conflict. Points within weakened relationships are a lack of police legitimacy and isolated communities. When communities perceive law enforcement as biased or unjust, it undermines the authority and effectiveness of the police. And when the police show actions of an unnecessary aggression that is then perceived as racially motivated, racial minorities and communities then feel isolated and abandoned by law enforcement. The next several slides will be about the solutions to ineffective policing. This slide mainly just goes over the four main solutions that I found on the review article, and that is problem-oriented policing, community problem solving, and procedural justice. So for procedural justice and community policing, procedural justice focuses on fairness in the processes that resolve disputes and allocate resources. The emphasis is on treating people with dignity and respect, leading to better compliance and cooperation from the community. It ensures transparency and consistency in the police's actions. Then, community policing is building strong relationships. It is about um, building positive relationships as well between the police and the community that they are residing in. Officers will work closely with the community members to identify and solve problems in their community, and in doing so, it creates trust and understanding. continued for community problem solving. It involves collaboration between police and community members. Um, and this is basically just like community policing, but it's the actual problem solving aspect of it, like the what they're gonna do when an issue occurs. So here's a photo that kind of explains just like everything that goes into um, community policing and connects to problem oriented policing, which is the specific problems and using data driven approaches to find those effective solutions. Um, it shifts the reactive to proactive policing, where the focus is on addressing the root causes rather than just the symptoms. So it's not just focusing on the aggressions or what it looks like, it's focusing on what other issues are going on to create the bigger picture. I just wanted to go over the main points shown in the slideshow presentation before going over any of the discussion questions. So the information is just somewhat fresh in everybody's brain. So I have that effective policing in America varies and its efficiency is especially flawed within non white demographics. Communities come from communities from the victimized racial minorities feel both neglected and helpless against racialized policing and complicating the relationship and duty police have to citizens. Um, and the possible solutions to fend off uh, police slash community discourse includes community policing, problem oriented policing, procedural justice, and community problem solving. Alrighty, now that we explored some approaches to improving policing, here are some discussion questions to think about. In your opinion, what do you think are good examples of how America's law enforcement should do policing? Do you think law enforcement in America differs in different subcultures or areas of society? If so, do you believe that it could have a racial connotation? Why or why not? Do you think the effectiveness of America's criminal justice system is racially motivated? Why or why not? All right, that's all I've had here. I hope you enjoyed this presentation and it gave you some insight to what goes on in effective policing. Thank you so much.